He gets up after he eats breakfast. He gets in the chair. He gets out of bed, eats breakfast. He goes to the chair.
How did you and Francie
Making me get rid of everything.
My wife's great aunt divorced and married her second. I'll tell you later. Now I'm going to sit down.
do you want to come over here and see?
Ben, stop acting like you have friends. That's why I tell everybody it's on their phone. We're gonna get things rolling here, and this is not my first rodeo, but my first attempt at doing this. Joe Malmaser had done this for 5, 6, 7 years, something like that. Last year he said, "You're going to do this." So I was kind of voluntold. But I would like to say a few things about, first of all, thanks for coming out to support those who are being inducted. Being in the Hall of Fame is about, to me, 3 things: pride, desire, and dedication. That is something that was instilled to me with Coach Sakel, and some of you might remember Coach Sakel from years ago. Coach Sakel was a football coach here, and that was kind of his mantra, if you will. And I've tried to bring that on as a coach to the athletes that I've coached. And so, that being said, just a few things about some of our inductees tonight. I know some of you I don't. So, here goes. First of all, Matt Kissel. Matt was one of the best football minds. I coached football when Matt was playing here, and I'm not going to steal anybody's thunder with their speeches tonight, but I'm just going to have a little recollection. Matt was, what a football mind he had. He was, if you paid attention as a coach, he would lead you to victory. He just, if you just looked at him on the field and watched what he did, and sometimes he would motion to the sideline, do that same play again, because I'm going to do something different, and you could expect success. And it was uncanny how he could do that, and he made us look good. Robert Carlisle, handsome, intelligent, athletic, the total package. Brother James, Jim Flager, handsome, intelligent, athletic, and the bigger package. and one of my sidekicks, Brother James and I have been together since long about 96. It's been a good relationship. Shirley Miller. When I was inducted into the Hall of Fame, I talked about all of the moms that somebody who's successful has to have. Shirley was one of my moms. I grew up with her as a mom, and she looked after not just me, but everybody she encountered. And she was a mom. She was one of the people who looked after everybody that came around her, and you need that. You can't just have one mom and be successful. You have to have one moms. Lee Cathera, I don't know a whole lot about it, but I did kind of handsome. young looking. Yeah, I did go online and look at some stuff that you've written, and it's beyond my capacity. Yeah.
Probably beyond mine.
But is your wife's name Sandy? That's, I've had such a tough week with track. We have 3 track meets this week. I'm the head coach of both genders. And I'm just trying to think of some stuff. But anyways, Alan Vine. Could you imagine if you were alive here and you had to follow him with his speech? Yeah, what did you do? I found the Titanic. No, that just boggles the imagination. It's kind of like John Glenn. What did you do? I walked on the moon. Anyways, we're gonna kick things off, and there's an order, I understand. But first, I know I'm taking over for Joe, and Joe just kind of got into things, and I'm not going to just get into things. I feel a need for a little entertainment, because, my grandmother lived in Nycut, West Virginia, and she taught in a one-room schoolhouse in Nycut, West Virginia, which took 3rd grade through 8th grade. She was the only teacher, well, there were 2 adults, the cook and my grandmother. And when Little League was over, my older brother and I got sent to Nycut, West Virginia to live with Grandma during the summer. It's probably because my parents didn't live with us. But Grandma had a good sense of humor, and since we're on, some of this takes place on Carlisle Hill. I grew up with Carlisle Hill. That was the hill. It's Carlisle Hill. And the Kissels are at the top of Carlisle. And so I thought I might bring a little of my grandmother's humor into the beginning of this. And bear with me, if you will. I knew there might be children here tonight, so some of my grandmother's humor I'm going to share with you. And if you know the answer, too bad, don't say it out loud. What do you call cattle with a sense of humor? Laughing stock. I asked a farmer if it's easy to milk cows, and he said, any jerk can do it. What did baby corn say to the mama corn? Well, I'm waiting. I still have my day job.
That's good.
And my evening job. Where's popcorn? Like I need a heckler. Why did the cow jump over the moon? The farmer's hands were too cold. If a pig loses his voice, is he disgruntled? How did the pig get to the hospital? By ambulance. And we'll finish my segment with a little poem from my grandmother. The woodpecker pecked on the schoolhouse door. He pecked and he pecked till his pecker got sore. Sorry. That's my grandmother's sorry.
She's dead.
You either like it or you don't. So we're going to start with somewhere in here I wrote down. Steve Wiley is going to introduce Robert Carlyle.
Yeah, Wiley.
This is much different. I thank you. Sorry, I don't have any comic stylings. I'm here to obviously honor Robert Carlyle today. I was over the moon when he contacted me this summer and asked if I would do this for him, and I said, or not summer, it was football season already, this fall, and I was over the moon because I would do anything for Robert, and I know that he would do anything in return for me. Oddly enough, I just found out how old he is. He's 28 years old. So I feel a little bit more comfortable that I can start telling people I have a 28-year-old best friend. And he's still 18 to me. That sounds weird coming from a man, a grown man, an 18-year-old best friend. Like that's how he'll always be that little boy on the football field. If it sat in my room every single day and watched football films. And as his mom just stated at the table, we were solving the world's problems. That I was so distraught when I left here because he wasn't here anymore. I truly miss him, and now my best friend's all the way in South Carolina, correct? Dr. Robert Carlyle. That sounds good to have that tag as well. Some anecdotes with him. He's a tremendous athlete. He won a total of 12 high school letters. That's uncanny for especially a boy to do that. Normally they put you on a hiatus, they put you on the sideline until you can grow into the position. We just threw him into the wolves. All three coaches threw him to the wolves. I know that, do you remember, Robert, your first game? Mogador. We threw him straight to the wolves. He had to go with, I can't even remember his name.
Cabinet.
Yeah, the cabinet, the older one. Even his size now, he was a cornerback. He started out at cornerback. He graduated, he was playing outside linebacker. He was playing corner. He didn't ever practice with corners, but we threw him to the wolves because we knew he could do it. A lot like Mr. Bennett said about Kissel. You knew what you were going to get with him. We knew what we were going to get with Robert. Everybody knew what they were going to get. I know that he was a tremendous student, 4.0. Didn't you end up, I remember distinctly, they got out early your junior year, that you were studying for the ACT? I don't know. He was down in the library. We're giving exams and whatnot. They could leave early. And he's downstairs in the library studying for the ACT. A test that nobody else is studying for. He needed to get a certain score. That's the kind of person he was. He always went above and beyond. And that kind of rings true. I remember, why am I so tired? Why am I so tired? Robert would wake up at the butt crack of dawn. So I had to look at the guys. Sorry, guys. He'd wake up, go to football practice, go home, work on the farm and whatnot. It was just a big deal for me to have to reschedule practice a little later because he had to be in the fair and whatnot. I didn't realize until I started eating the sides of beef that we started buying from him. I missed those sides. Man. So he did that, but we figured it out. As well as, weren't you, this is the one thing that I remember, weren't you talking about transferring your senior year, allegedly? Mom's chuckling because you were gonna go to Neo Med. Now, it was Neo UConn then. You were gonna go there because you want an AP English class, and we didn't offer that. So I went downstairs, and I believe it was Mr. Cook then. I went there, I said, we need to have an AP English class. I'm gonna lose my quarterback. You know, I'm still teaching today. AP English class. No, but my current students now, thank you for that. So I took up enough of your time. I love Robert. I will still do anything for you, even after today. There's still got to be more, Mr. Doctor. You could probably do something for me later when my hips and knees go out. Yeah. You know, I'm supposed to try to get a TSH test. I have it written on my hand to get my thyroid checked. Because apparently I don't have an appetite. Some of you made comment when I walked in that, where's the rest of Wiley? I'm way down on the scale. I'm back almost to my high school playing days. I don't want to be those. I'm not going to play. No, I'm not running 152. I'm going to ride a bicycle that way. All right, without further ado, Robert Carlisle.
What Wiley failed to tell you is I gave up a touchdown that game.
It's about you. It's
It was
not about
a corner
what
out
you
in
did.
the zone that I failed to cover correctly. So I'm playing right. I tried to type something out, so I was somewhat prepared, but sort of fell asleep on playing. So, but yeah, with Wiley, I really appreciate everything you say, Wiley. Getting to know you, I can remember. Freshman year, you were my position coach, and I was a little nervous because you're so particular about everything and so serious. And eating lunch with him basically every single day in high school, watching film, and then just solving the world problems. Really got to know him and become really good friends, not only high school, college, and beyond, but someone I definitely call one of my best friends. So thank you very much, Father.
No problem.
So being inducted into the Hall of Fame, it means the world to me. And to have everyone here, I'm just very thankful that everyone is here to support myself and everyone else being inducted. But thank you so much to the committee for considering me and bringing me into the Hall of Fame. It's a great honor. And everyone who was able to put on the dinner and set everything up tonight, thank you for taking the time out of your days to do that. It's been great to see so many people. It's been a while as Brandon and I are down in South Carolina now, so we don't get to see everyone as much as we'd like, but some people I know, I was thinking about stuff in high school, and every day before I go to lunch to watch film or talk with Wiley, I'd have to reach in my sock to get my lunch money, give it to Amy Phelps, so I get my double lunch, my double chocolate milk, and Powerade every day. So thanks for willfully accepting the sweaty lunch money. Aunt Cheryl, Uncle Vince, my godparents, thank you so much for coming out and being here. I appreciate it. I swear, this emotion stuff is just terrible. I'm so emotional, and I think that I got it from her. It's just terrible. Kennedy, thank you guys so much. I mean, from the beginning, you guys were there supporting me, and I appreciate it. Now I can, call you guys mom and dad too. So thank you so much. Aunt Jane, Uncle Marty, thank you. How you doing? Thank you both for coming. I mean, you guys mean the world to me, and I can remember. Oh my gosh.
I had this with there in person. Those of you that remember. And it's, I know when you think about everybody that got you here.
That's what I'm doing.
I know, and you have this time warp kind of thing, and it's kind of takes you all up, and when you leave here tonight, it'll happen again. And, right now,
I'm trying. What I was gonna say, I can remember Uncle Marty. It was third grade, and it was the first basketball game that I played. It was St. Joe's that was coaching. Scored 14 out of 18 points. We lost. And I called Uncle Marty, and I was like so excited. And I was telling him, he's like, "Oh, how'd you do?" And I told him I scored 14 points. And he's like, "No, Rob, how'd the team do?"
Yeah, this guy is.
I'll give him a moment because, I played in the faculty-student basketball game for 33 years, and I have one loss. Who was that to? This guy and his group.
So back when I was in third grade, Uncle Marty had said, he was asking me about the team, and I said, "Well, we lost." And he's like, "Well, wow, I mean, that's what it's all about. It's about the team." Since that day, like, anytime someone's asked me about how we've done, first thing is always about the team. And I just want to say thanks to Uncle Marty.
Well, he is a legend. It's not like you're just thanking.
Some guy on the side, like my uncle. I thank my uncle. Everybody's like, "Who's he? Who's he thinking?" My uncle's picking up sticks in his front yard. I'm just saying.
Someone that's not here, my grandma, Granny, is someone I just want to try to thank for being there. Being there at every single game.
Are we allowed to say something right now? 'Cause I
Sorry.
want to.
I'm really sorry.
Somebody didn't mention, and I know that Robert's not going to mention it, but we all know that Robert was our high school Heisman Award. But he then went on to win the Ohio High School Heisman Award. That, I don't know anybody else who's done that at our school, and I don't know anybody personally who's done that, but Robert did that, and that's pretty darn amazing. You don't just get it for one sport, you don't just get it for being smart, and they didn't even count his looks. But all those things, Ohio Heisman High School Award winner right there.
Thanks, Marty. So CJ, I know that we went from hitting each other, hating each other, to then competing with each other and seeing who scored more, or won more games and whatnot. And now we go to hanging out with each other and trying to meet up whenever we can. So, thanks. Mom and Dad.
This is the toughest part. So I throw that out there.
I can't thank you both enough for everything. I love you both so much. And Dad's always the one who said, just act like you've been there before and do a terrible job. And finally, Miranda, I don't know what to say. Thank you. Been through a lot together and a lot more to go through. So thank you for always being on my side. And thank you everybody for listening.
Yeah, it's not emotional, it doesn't matter.
You know, and when you're emotional about it, it obviously matters. So I need a thing. This is the lineup over here. Matt Kessel. Coach Morgan and I, many of you know Coach Morgan, Craig Morgan. He's a friend of mine. He's a longtime friend of mine. He was for 6 years. He was the head football coach, and I was his assistant, and I was head track coach, and he was my assistant. And we had a great deal of success together. He wanted me to share some things about Matt Kissel with you. You know, what I was basically going to say was what I said earlier about the fact that he made us look good. He was a coach on the field. He just knew what needed to happen, and he could read the defense, and it's incredible. But Coach Morgan, he sent this to me today, and I don't know if I'll read all of it because it's like 3 pages, but he wanted me to say, I'm honored to be able to express a few words about Matt Kissel. Those of you who know me also know that if I were actually speaking this evening, it would be a lot longer. Coach Morgan has a stuttering problem. And he put here, and that's one of the things about Coach Morgan that I, you know, when we were coaching football, he would, you know, if a receiver went out and made a cut, he'd freak out about it. And when he'd freak out, that's when he really started stuttering. He'd say, "You're supposed to make that cut at 5 yards." Hey, Coach Morgan, that's 15 yards. That's kind of the report Coach Morgan. But anyways, he goes on to say, I've had the pleasure of coaching many fine athletes during my time at James A. Garfield, but none more humble or more deserving of this honor than Matt Kissel. Matt was a coach on the field, a leader in the huddle, and a playmaker on the field. In football, the mental game is half the battle in any victory. Matt had mental toughness and was a student of the game, and he learned very quickly. I'll never forget when Coach Julio St. Clemente, who was an all-league player at Mount Union, hard to believe he was a tall, skinny white boy, but his name was Julio St. Clemente, came to me during Matt's sophomore year, week 4, and said, Matt Kissel should be your starting varsity quarterback. I said, Julio, who's 5'5", I said, Julio, he is 5'5", weighs 125 pounds soaking wet. I fear for his health. At this time, our offense was struggling to block the other team with much regularity, but he earned our respect during his first sophomore varsity game. Without Matt Kissel, number 7, we would not have won the Portage County League in 1993 against Southeast by a convincing score of 69-38.
Oh, wow.
I have it on tape. It was pretty impressive. Matt's commitment and toughness was yet again evident in the 1994 championship game, as he was consistently throwing up, throwing up on the sidelines throughout the entire game. But Matt absolutely refused to come out of the game on offense.
Thanks for stealing my thunder, JB.
Well, see,
That's all right.
here's what I remember about that game. In 1994 championship game at Southeast, we were down, I think 6, less than a touchdown. We're driving, and Matt takes off, and he's scrambling, and he gets hit from behind, and the ball is fumbled. And I'm standing on the sideline, and the ball is right there, right in front of me. I want to I just wanted to kick it out of bounds because I knew it would be our ball still. And all these Southeast, they're just coming. Southeast recovery.
Well, I think this is probably a good time for me to give a better perspective.
Right. I knew if I did that, I would never coach again.
I appreciate it, John.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you.
Didn't mean to cut you off, but time.
Yeah, well, they're thankful.
Time is of the essence. No, but Robert, you did a nice job. This is my second time around. I got inducted in my college Hall of Fame about 10, 12 years ago or so. When I very first started, I didn't get a good synopsis like that. I had to come up here just and wing it. The first 5 minutes went a lot like this. 5 minutes straight. It's not easy. So Robert, you did a nice job. Well, we're here today. This time it's going to go better. All right, 6 or 7 days ago, I told my wife about this event tonight for the first time.
6 or 7 days ago. She took it pretty well. Now again, you just remember that 12 years ago I stood up here for 5 minutes and didn't say a word. But she took it okay. She said, Matt, that's great. Just keep the speech to under 5 minutes. And I told the kids about it. I told the kids, hey, I'm elected into the Hall of Fame. And my 9-year-old daughter, Ella, goes like this. Sweet! We're gonna be famous. She did a little cuter than I did. The microphone's in the way. No, but it was funny. She thinks I'm famous now. But being in the Hall of Fame is quite an honor. The main reason I'm up here today is because of that play. 3rd and 2, midfield, under a minute or 2 left in the game is the reason I'm here. I was a decent athlete, I would think. Played football, basketball, baseball. Coachable.
Shouldn't run track.
Coachable. Couldn't run track. Didn't allow me to run track. I ran track until the 8th grade. And then I decided to hit a baseball. Try to hit a baseball. It's very hard to hit a baseball. But I tried. But anyways, at 3rd and 2 is the reason I'm up here. And I'm up here to tell you my version. But I'll get to it. But anyways, leading up to that play, the championship game, my senior year, the very last play of my football career. We got to take a step back a little bit for my favor. Leading up to that game, I was, the year before, we won the championship, and he's right, it was pretty, yeah. And then we made it back the next year. But a few days coming into the game, I came down with some weird illness. I mean, everybody gets sick, get the flu, you get the cold, and you kind of, you have to tough it out, you know, and go to your job, try to tough it out. But this was something different. But it was tough because, you know, you work your whole athletic career to get to that point, to be your senior year and to play in a championship game. And I just didn't have it. But I toughed through it. And the reason I did was because my brother Greg was the backup quarterback. So I figured, let's get all the fame last year. Or it was me to just tough it out at maybe 50% of my normal playing ability. But in my view, it was still 50% better than Greg. So I gave it a go. And it was a good game. We played pretty well. Like JB says, we were up 6, up by 6 with a couple minutes left in the game. Basically, we just needed 2 yards, which for a lot of you that don't know what 2 yards is in football, it's 6 feet. It's only about this much, about that far. But he called a good play. I don't know, they relied on me. I tried to get the yardage. I remember scrambling out, and JB's right on that part. I remember scrambling out, trying to get that extra yard or two, and 2 guys kind of held me up, stripped the ball, The ball goes flying right over the sidelines, right in front of our bench, and everybody just sees that ball laying on the ground. I tried to get there, but I didn't get there. Southeast recovered the ball. About a minute and a half later, they went down, scored a touchdown, won the game with just a few seconds left. But that was my last play in my high school career. With leading up to that, everything led up to it. But I remind you, we did win the championship the year before. So don't feel so bad for me. But anyways,
We still won the North.
whatever. I forgot about that. No, but that play, I don't know. It's probably the reason I'm here, because that play motivated me. JB says I was motivated already. Coach Morgan says I was motivated and had determination. But that play motivated me more than anything once I got into college. Because in college, I came from James A. Garfield High School in Garrettsville, Ohio. When I went to college, I was a freshman in Mercyhurst College playing football, but I was one of about 55 or 60 freshman football players. And I was 8th on the depth chart out of 8 quarterbacks my freshman year. And so it wasn't easy. No, I didn't tell anybody about the fumble. That was the greatest part about nobody knowing what Garrettsville or James A. Garfield was. I didn't know about the fumble. But anyways, where I was going with that, before I was rudely interrupted. So being 8th on the depth chart as a freshman on a team of 140 players, that moment, that 3rd and 2, is what I reflected on to motivate me to become a very good college quarterback. And how I did it, anybody plays college, and once you get to the college level, it's a whole nother level. But like I said, I was 8th on the depth chart. My freshman year, the 7th or 8th week of my freshman year, we actually played like freshman scrimmages, and I broke my throwing arm. I broke a bone in my wrist. Doctor said, it's not even anywhere near any, I'm not a doctor, maybe Robert can help me with this. I broke the middle bone of my wrist, and they said there's no veins there, no nothing, it's never going to heal. So 4 months later, after having a cast up to about here for about 3 or 4 months, somehow it healed. So I go into my sophomore year, and 2 other freshmen were now quarterbacks, so I was like 10th on the depth chart, coming off the broken arm my freshman year. But I hung with it, stuck to my roots of being determined, looking back on my career here at Garfield, and that 3rd down and 2. And it inspired me to stay with it, because college is tough. Some of you guys, Cole Dean sitting over there, younger kids, is you realize everybody thinks they're a star when they're in high school. A lot of kids are. But when you go to college, there's plenty of stars. But the key is you got to find motivation. You got to find your dedication, and you got to use that to your ability. And you do that with anything, not just sports. It could be your career or whatever, but you have to find motivation and dedication. And it enables you to be successful, not just in athletics, but anything. So that's my story on the 3rd and 2. It was rough, but the key is to take something that is a negative and turn it to a positive. I'd like to thank a few people that are here probably. First off is maybe the coaches. I played football, basketball, baseball. JB over there was quite an inspiration, quite a comical character, but during practice he was pretty serious. One thing he taught me that I took on to my future was never cut corners. The one thing he used to say when we would have our warm-up laps down at the stadium before our pregame on like Thursday, and I stuck to it, is you never cut a corner when you're taking that first lap. And it's something that just instilled with me that once that happened, when she gave me that advice and all the things that happened to me, it all come together and made me who I am. So I appreciate JB, all you did. Coach Craig Morgan, obviously I appreciate what he did. All the coaches, Julio Saclemente, like he said, I didn't hear that before, but I'm glad he said what he said. Don Long, who's still at school here, all you guys are still involved, and I appreciate everything he did. Basketball coaches, Dick Brockett, He's a good guy. He's the only guy in the world that can be serious and funny in the same sentence. He's a funny guy. All the coaches. That's it for coaches, I guess. Baseball's baseball. Anybody can coach baseball. Well, he's true about that, but yeah, I forget their names, so we'll pass them over. But I probably should thank a few other people since they're sitting right here and we're at the closest table here. And I'm probably getting past my 5-minute limit. All right? No? Hold it. Jump out there. Further. Right there. Are you ready? Yes. Yay.
Another one. Oh.
Give it to Mom. Tracy, have you been keeping track of the clock? Okay, was it past 5 minutes? All right. If you can throw that ball and hit me, I will stop right now. Come on, this is your chance. Hit me. You don't want to do it? All right, nope, she doesn't get to try. So instead of doing that, I'll just thank a few more people. I'd like to thank my parents that are sitting right here, Bonnie and Earl. I'm one of 6 kids when we played a lot of sports, as you might imagine. So growing up, my parents were always running around doing their thing, getting us to where we need to be, and I just want to say thanks. I'd also like to thank my wife over there, Tracy. Tracy and I go way back, way back. We actually met in the 4th grade here at James A. Garfield Elementary School. I moved into the district from a brief stint in Ravenna. We moved from Columbus, went to a Catholic school in Ravenna for a few months, then moved here. Tracy also moved from a Christian school in Ravenna in the 3rd grade, so we met in the 4th grade when we moved here. She's a 1995 graduate as well. She was a cheerleader for football, basketball, and also a very good softball player on a very good softball team. Do you want to go up there too? You'll get your time. But anyways, I just want to say thanks to her. She's a great role model, a great person, and also a great wife, but more importantly, a great mother. So Tracy, thanks for everything you do, because you're a big part of this. And with that, I'd just like to thank all the inductees, or congratulate them. I'd like to congratulate the administration and the current scholar athletes here at James A. Garfield. Yeah, Cole, I guess I'll thank you. Cole Bean. No, congratulations, seriously, we've had a really nice run with our athletic teams this year, and it brings me back to kind of think of my generation. It's been a while. Back in 1995, I graduated, so it's been a while. But I see a lot of similarities with the coaching staff today, the coaching staff back then, and also the administration. So congratulations, guys. Thank you. Thank you all.
Well, side note about the Kissels, I've had all 6 Kissels in class. And back when I coached middle school basketball, Doug Kissel, the elder, I was getting phone numbers to, in case we had a snow day or whatever, I was taking phone numbers, and Doug said his phone number was 527-4509. And that was my phone number growing up. It's one of those things that recycled phone numbers. It's probably your phone number to this day, isn't it?
We still get all the debt collector calls.
Better you than me. Better you than me. Next on the list is Lee Kathera, being introduced by Cody Kathera.
All right. get the pleasure of watching Lee play because he's my dad, so I got to hear a lot of stories from him. Shared a couple with me. He's kind of quiet, doesn't always talk about, doesn't brag about his accomplishments, I'll say, but let me see here. Feedback from the phone. I went the high-tech route and wrote my speech down on my phone. He did take a lot of pride in teaching me football, basketball, baseball, and play the same 3 sports as he did. And it was kind of nice to be here tonight and know that all of the stories he told me about himself are true. Since I wasn't there to verify them. If you know my family, my Aunt Chris was a little upset that I showed up tonight because she wanted to introduce him. If you want any R-rated stories, she'll be here later. But again, my dad was a great athlete. He took great pride in teaching me, which is kind of how I have to introduce him because I didn't get to see him. But he taught me how to play all the sports. He knew, the mindset, teaching me to be competitive and how to excel and be in the right place at the right time, and teaching me the work ethic that I have today, which I'm proud of him for teaching me. I learned recently that he was a 3-year letterman in 3 different sports, playing sophomore, junior, and senior year in football, basketball, and baseball. Playing basketball, he often got tasked with guarding much taller guys, 6'5", 6'7", a couple that went on to play D1 basketball. And when he comes up here, he's shorter than I am, so I'm sure that was not an easy task.
You're trying to say you're taller than me?
I am. Wasn't always the case, but will be from now on. He hit a game-winning shot in his junior season, I think, and it happened to fall on his birthday, which a lot of basketball players in the room here, I don't know how many ever hit a game winner, but it's, something that everyone dreams of doing, and not a lot of guys actually get to do it. As a football player, he was a halfback and a linebacker, and also got to throw a go-ahead touchdown on a halfback pass. So 2 sports, he actually, had the winning drive or winning play. Again, not a lot of people get to do that, so I think that's something that's a cool experience. It did sound like, and I got a lot of information from his brother Clark, who was a year younger. But it sounded like baseball was really his sport. He was a good pitcher. Clark was the catcher. Had a curveball that I was told even in his senior season would make batters fall out of the batter's box. He would occasionally call Clark out and tell him that he was going to pitch someone tight, and usually would follow through on that promise. And another thing that actually some of the younger guys here that play baseball might find amusing, but I graduated in 2000. I did not go to Garfield here, so I did make my dad sit on the visitors sideline for 4 years, but we won't talk about that. But Dave Wolf was an umpire when my dad played, and he was an umpire when I played. So and there's a 35-year gap there. So he was still legally blind when we drafted so I figured I'd throw that out there and kind of bridge the generational gap here. A lot of years. Oh, he did a good job, I guess I'll say. I don't know. He did do a good job, but he was obviously had a love for the game. He was hung around for a long time. And the other good story I heard is that a lot of times when the baseball games would get rained out, my dad and the baseball team would go over to Sugar Bush and get 9 holes in, which kind of sounds odd because it's rain out, but occasionally he would kick his golf bag and break a couple clubs that were inside. So Clark wanted me to share that story with you, but no, I'm glad to be up here. I'm proud to introduce my dad and see him getting rewarded for all the hard work he put in on the field, and then everything he's done since then. And that's really all I have down here. So I wanted to come on up. So congrats, Dad. Thank you.
All I can say is, wow. I mean, I always dreamed this, I never expected it to happen. I really didn't know there was a Hall of Fame until about 7 or 8 years ago when we were going to a basketball game that our granddaughter was playing over here at high school. And we walked in the gym and there were the plaques on the wall. And I looked at them and I saw Jim, Dr. Pesachek. I saw who was my dentist until he retired. I saw Harry Vincent, who was a tremendous athlete whom I played with. Actually, had I caught more passes, he'd have been a greater athlete. I saw Larry Roach, who I played basketball with. And I saw my brother-in-law, AKA Mitch the B word over there. And I said, you know, it would be so cool someday to be on this wall. But I thought, no, it just won't happen. Then in January, I got the letter, and for some reason it was sent to my work address. Actually, I don't know why I'm still working, but it was sent to my work address. And from James A. Garfield, I didn't read the Hall of Fame part. So I thought, I just wonder if I've got a library fine I never read. So I opened the letter and I read it, and I was like, wow. I took the letter home, showed it to Sandy. I said, just read this, son, just read this. So she read it, and she says, I think they sent it to the wrong address. But in any case, it wasn't the wrong address. So then I kept asking myself, I know I had a pretty good athletic career, I had a pretty good business career. I was like, what triggered this to really work? And that sort of bugged me from January up until yesterday and then up until this morning. So last night, we were looking at the paper, I was looking at the inductees from the Villager. And I said, this is starting to make a little bit of sense right now. There's three guys being inducted into the Hall of Fame, graduating mid to late 90s and 2000s. And now here I am, class of roughly 66. So I took their ages and I added them all together. And I got to a number and said, that's my year. Probably the board that makes this decision got that number, tried to find somebody that was still breathing, and said, okay. Then this morning, it was confirmed by the Record Courier, because I read the article, and I realized instead of getting 9 letters in high school, I got 27. I was a 9-year letterman in football, basketball, and baseball. I thought that was tremendous. But, you know, the reality of it is, I was not even supposed to go to Garfield. I went to a school back then called Hiram. Now, some of you guys may not realize this, but there used to be a school there. And I was in the 8th grade, going into the 9th grade, that summer between the 2 periods. And it was common knowledge that Hiram was going to close and merge with Garrettsville in about 2 years. So Coach Buck Pelsu, who maybe a lot of you don't know, but I think he might be on the Hall of Fame, I think, right? I'm not sure, but in any case, Buck Pelsu was basketball and baseball coach. he talked to my dad and said, why don't you have Lee come to Garrettsville a year early? He can't play varsity sports, but he can practice with the teams. He can, you know, participate, get to know the kids, and be ready to go when he's a sophomore. So I said, you know what, that's a great idea, let's do that. So my freshman year, we played like that. Then between 9th grade and 10th grade, just as it was supposed to happen, Hiram closed and they consolidated with Preston. So now I had a choice. Stay in Garrettsville, where I now have new friends, or go to Crestwood, where I had my old friends. And I sat there and I went, you know, black and gold, or that gaudy red and gray. Are you serious? Now my sister would have a different version if she was up here right now. And I would like too. But so in any case, so I stayed in Garrettsville, and then the rest, as they say, might be history. So with that, Cody mentioned a few things. I'm sure you all remember late last June, there was a relatively large parade in downtown Cleveland. And there was a certain individual who did quite a bit of talking there, who I think is like a future Hall of Famer. And he talked about the block, he talked about the stop, and he talked about the shot. Well, with all due respect to this future Hall of Famer, he can have the block and he can have the stop, but he doesn't get the shot. The shot didn't happen in Oakland in 2016. It happened on a cold Friday, January night in 1965. And we were playing those dreaded Streetsboro Pirates. We were both basically playing, we were in the running for the championship. In the end, we didn't win, Wyndham won, but we were in the running at that time. And the score was probably 50-all or 52-all or 54-all, something like that. And we had the ball with a timeout with about 10 or 12 seconds to go. Everybody in the building knew that Larry Roach was going to get that last shot. So I took my position over in the left wing, about 14 or 15 feet away from the basket. The closest defender that I saw was the first row of the Streetsboro students in the bleachers. We got the ball inbounded to Larry just like we planned. As good as Larry was, there was no way he was going to beat a 1-on-5. He got the ball to Jim Roback, who thought it was a hot potato. He passed it to me in the corner. With about 2 seconds to go, the shot went up, and immediately Larry Roach gave me the biggest hug I ever had in my life. At that time, hon. And needless to say, the shot went in and we won, and that's the shot that Cody was talking about. But it was just sort of kind of cool. You know, a buzzer beater is just sort of kind of cool. I know Marty's probably got dozens of them. But it was just sort of kind of cool. So with that, I just want to say again, however I got voted in, thank you very much. I greatly appreciate it. Let's do it again in our next generation. Thank you.
Again, I think that the theme of pride, desires, education continues to ring true. Next in the line is Shirley Miller. I understand Sherry going to speak on the
Are you ready for me?
Are we ever?
No. I'm waiting for my big introduction.
Come on now!
Sorry, but some of you
you know me quite well in this room, and I apologize to those that don't. But unlike Cody, I went high tech, but mine's a little bigger. Not only do I have my iPad, but I have my glasses too here, so bear with me while I remember where I put it on my iPad. But first, before I talk about Shirley, and it's really hard, I want you guys to know for me to even call her Shirley, because I've known her since I was probably younger than your kids, you know. So I often through my speech I will probably revert to Mrs. Miller. But one of the things I want to say before I get started into the real reason I'm up here is that for the past, let's see, 7 years, maybe 6, I've had the pleasure of heading up the Hall of Fame. I took over for my dad, and I mentioned to Robert tonight that I really think that, you know, my dad and Robert's parents and a few other people really started this Hall of Fame. And I mentioned to Robert that they did it for him. Not for him specifically, but for kids like him. I mean, my dad thought Robert Carlyle was probably the nicest young man in the world. This is my turn to get a little bit teary-eyed because my dad's been gone for about 7 years. But he would be so incredibly proud of everybody that's been inducted for the past several years. But Robert, we talked for a long time about your playing days and the things that you did on the field. You know, I miss that a lot because, you know, we had a really special relationship when it came to sports. And I know it probably sounds a little silly to you, but it means a lot to me to see somebody like you being inducted because you meant so much to my dad. You know, so thank you for at least being part of those memories that I cherish so much now. But anyhow, you know, I've worked with Robert's mom, you know, for the last several years on the Hall of Fame, and it's a lot of fun to come here and hear all the stories, you know, and everything and the memories that people you know, talk about. So, you know, the fact that I get to actually get up here and talk on Shirley's behalf is kind of like, you know, it's pretty cool. But I do have some words written down. I promise I won't be long. Well, maybe. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. But anyhow, as I mentioned, I've been, my iPad's zooming, hold on. Okay. I've been, you know, given this opportunity by Shirley's family. You know, they were kind of a little bit worried about actually having to get up here and talk. And then, you know, the people in the room here that know me know, like, I'll do it. You know, I immediately jumped up and volunteered. But as I mentioned, I've known her practically my entire life. I have really fond memories of visiting her when I was a kid. I had to ask the name of the road because I couldn't remember, but in Asbury they lived out in Freedom when I first, you know, my first memories of her. But when I really came to know Mrs. Miller was in junior high. She was at the time I don't know if she was the librarian, I think maybe the attendance clerk was a better probably description, but we would have conversations with her in the library in the middle school. She had a great rapport with us for middle school students, which for middle school girls, you know, she understood middle school girls, and I have 2 daughters of my own, and that is no easy task to understand girls at any stage, let alone the middle school years. But she could, you know, we would talk about so many different things, you know. Did I lost my place? Anyhow, the fact that she related to the 7th and 8th grade girls, 7th and 8th grade boys even, that is a very tough age. You know, that in itself, I think, warrants her induction into a Hall of Fame, you know. I mean, she really could, you know, you could tell her anything. You know, we could talk to her about boys, although I don't remember, you know, being, you know, that much into boys when I was like 13. But anyhow, you could talk to her about anything. You could talk to her about the problems that you were having in school, at home, you know, whatever. But I guess when I really started to value our friendship was when I became an adult. I mentioned that my dad passed away a few years ago, and she helped me through that, you know. Him and I were really close. But she would listen to me maybe, you can't tell anybody this, but she would listen to me complain about my mom, you know, and those of you that know my mom, I have a great mom, but you know, no matter what your age is, you're always gonna, you know, have a problem with mom. She would listen, and she wouldn't judge you. She'd give you good advice and everything, and you know, I miss that. I miss that a lot about her. You know, we always hear the term like a second mom, you know, and I never really liked that term a lot because, you know, I did have a good mom. I may have complained about her, but I had a great set of parents and everything. But Shirley was like a second mom to a lot of us. you know, I mean, you know, the fact that you could tell somebody, I don't even know how much older than I am, that, you know, that she is, but, you know, I could talk to her about anything, and there's such a big age gap between us. But the reason she's being inducted tonight is service to the Garfield school system. You know, she worked here for some 25 years, I think. She was the attendance officer, she coached sports, she was a mainstay in the athletic boosters, I think, for much of that 25 years. I know if you go down to the football concession stand there, her name is written in the cement, you know. I always thought that was kind of cool. She also did middle school girls track and basketball, prom advisor, junior class advisor, cheerleading advisor. I didn't know she was cheerleading advisor, but, you know, that was on my list. But one of the things when I was trying to write this speech over the last couple of days is, you know, I can't remember anything, so I'm thinking, you know, I know the memories that I have. Some of them I can't exactly share because there's young people here. And my mom, I know, will find out about it eventually. So she surely did a good job at keeping, you know, the confidentiality of our talks and everything, you know. She wasn't going to, you know, a lot of my friends remember that too, that you could talk to her about anything. She always had, so anyhow, I guess I'm getting off track, but what I did was I reached out to some of my friends and said, what are your memories about her? You know, I have mine, but what are yours? And a couple of them said, you know, she always had a smile on her face, kind word of encouragement, we could go to her about anything, and she balanced, you know, all of that stuff out so well, but she kept us in line too, you know. Diane McBride, I probably shouldn't mention her name, but she told me she got in trouble once in high school. And she said, Shirley said it was the hardest thing to do because you had to discipline, even the kids that you really liked, you know, you still had to discipline them. She was a true and loving woman that we were all very blessed to have her in our lives. Another one of my friends said that, you know, she had a lot of trouble at home, in her home life and everything, and Shirley was like her personal counselor. You know, she could, again, common theme in my speech tonight, you could tell her anything, you know. She cared about us a lot, she really did. And, you know, Diane even told me that she went to her house and got ready for prom, you know, the year. Like, just all those things like that that you see, you know, happening. It's like she was just that kind of a special person. You could literally do anything with her. She would do anything for you. And one of the last things that I want to mention is that she was one of the founding members kind of our Sports Boosters Club, you know. I told you her name was in the cement at the concession stand and everything, and she did it for 25 years. You know, a lot of us do it for the years our kids are here in high school, you know, or whatnot, but she did it for 25 years, which I think is awesome. She, you know, she really, really cared about us. But tonight we induct her into our Hall of Fame in no large part because of her motto that she lived by, that the kids come first. And I think that's just, you know, that's what we're here for. We're here to make these kids that go through our halls, you know, productive members of society, and she helps a lot of us do that. So it's my pleasure to be the one up here talking to all of you and telling you my memories. Thank you for listening, but she was really a wonderful person. Thank you.
Next in line is a personal friend of mine, Brother James Flager. Jim was on arguably the best track team I ever coached. In 1999, they were fourth in the state, and Jim was a big part of that. And since then, Jim has been a big part of our success at the high school in many aspects. Not just track and field, but in students' lives. Jim has spent countless hours.
It's unbelievable. He and I spend more time at school than we do at home, and he's probably the only person that rivals me. And looking for no reimbursement. It's always, we always put our time and our money
toward trying to make the track programs better, but Jim has gone above and beyond in many aspects, and I don't want to steal Brother Matt's thunder, but Jim is very special to me, and speaking on his behalf, is Matt's brother.
All right. I could stand up here for hours and tell stories all day about Jim and I and his athletic career, his coaching career, our personal lives together. I actually was trying to be professional. I wrote up a speech and put it in full print so I could actually read it up here. So hopefully this doesn't take too long, but it's definitely a well-deserved person, kind of piggybacking off of what Sherry said. It is all about the children at the school, and Jim Flager's one of those guys that definitely put the kids first at all times. So this is my speech. Hopefully I didn't make too many errors because I'm an English teacher here. So I always harp on proofreading and everything, but when it comes to me, I usually don't. So without further ado, Jim Flager and his throwing crew have become a force to be reckoned with in not only the Portage Trail Conference, but also on the state and national level. But where did this all begin? How did this guy from a one-stoplight town start turning out state champions, All-Americans, and D1 athletes? It all began just a short walk from here, in the middle of a cinder track where two concrete paths were poured by, I believe John and Lou Spees. And we go to playing invites with Lou Spees' name. Jim Flager took the throws job in the spring of 2002. A football player and an aspiring football coach, Jim Flager didn't know as much as he does now, but he knew that he would not allow himself to coach the way his predecessors did in the discipline. He refused to just rely on genetics and luck to give him big oxes who could side shuffle and throw the shot football. Jim Flager wanted to develop throwers, not only in the weight room. Jim Flager himself was over 400-pound bench presser and could squat 700 pounds for reps. Jim also wanted to develop throwers in the technical aspect, techniques that take years to master and truly understand. And he did so by going to special classes out of his own pocket and spending hours upon hours reading articles online. Being his brother and his first athlete, obviously I had to be the guinea pig from this. That's in my speech. Yeah, all right. I won't say too much then. I was on the ground floor of his coaching career. I witnessed firsthand the hard work that he put in to become the best throws coach in the area. Since my throwing days, his athletes have only gotten better, and so has his coaching. He has had numerous state champions, 2 All-American athletes, and 6 D1 athletes. Lauren Jones being his most recent, who's now going to Oklahoma University next fall. Cole Dean, sitting there, is discussing whether or not he should go to Tiffin and be his 3rd D2 athlete, going on to further his education and grow far. Jim has never settled for mediocrity. He has never thrown in the towel and said that something is impossible. With every year that goes by, he still has the excitement and dedication for each and every one of his athletes. He is constantly trying to find the next big thrower, the next state champion, the next All-American. He has taken the time to be a student of the sport, mentor his athletes, and be a father figure, or a brother, to every one of his athletes. In my opinion, Jim Flager is the most deserving coach to be entered into the Hall of Fame, simply because he never thought for a second that simple kids from Garrisville, Ohio, couldn't achieve great things. He has never once stopped believing in the greatness that walks these halls, and he has always done everything in his power to assure that they receive the greatest coaching in Ohio and in the nation. Jim Flager, brother, your introduction tonight is well deserved. Come on up.
I went high tech too, Sherry. It's funny, I was just thinking over there, I wrote this thing up, I kind of like scratched out, I had some stuff on my phone. And my mom, when I was in high school, my mom knew how to type, I never knew how to type. So she'd always type on my papers for me, and then when I got to college, she'd type on myself. My mom would be like, you're gonna have to learn how to do this someday. And I go, 2 words, gym teacher, Mom. Gym teachers know how to do this. And now I'm an assistant principal, so that's all I do is sit at a computer all day. So maybe I could have listened to you be doing this. So, all right, let's see here. Okay, first off, a couple thank yous real quick. I'd like to thank the Hall of Fame, obviously, for inducting me in, and this nice spread that's put on. Sherry and Annette, I know how much you guys do for this and how much time you put in, and I mean, it's well deserved. I've been to a couple of these since I became AD, and now that I'm up here, you know, it's truly great. Also, I'd like to point out that Sherry has been a great friend to me the last few years. Besides this, when I first met her coming to the Hall of Fame stuff, but she was actually the first phone call I received when I got the AD job, and since then, you know, it's been a great friend to me. So just point that out. Okay. Let's see here, without going over some of the stuff I talked about last round, Dr. Matt. Well, first of all, thanks to my mom and dad for everything they've always done for me and all the support. In my current position, I deal with a lot of parents, many good, many bad. And the one thing is, my mom and dad definitely are the type of parents you want to deal with. They've always been there for me, always been supportive of me. And I remember looking back on things now when I'm writing this stuff up. I remember I was like 16. I was like probably like a junior, sophomore. Me and all my buddies, we went out. We decided to get jobs at the Turnpike and Dunkin' Donuts. We were all fired up, went, did all the stuff, did the drug test, got hired and all that stuff. Didn't tell our parents. I remember coming home. I told my mom and dad, I was like, hey, we got jobs. You know, we're all there. And I was like, you're not taking a damn job at Dunkin' Donuts. He's like, you got the rest of your life for it. Your job's going to be to play sports and have fun, and you know, and that support. You know, it just looking back, it's always meant a lot to me. So, next, I'd like to thank Mr. Bennett sitting over there, who, like he said, I've been involved with KB for a very long time. He's been my mentor. One of the big reasons I got into coaching and wanted to be a teacher, you know, you're kind of in that lull where you really don't know what you want to do when you grow up. And I remember, you know, I was on the track team, and I played football, and I quit the track team because our throws coach was terrible at the time, and he'd go back there and hit golf balls. I'm like, man, this is a big waste of my time. You know, I'm going to go to college and play football, and I'm like, I'm just wasting my time back here. And it was spring break. I remember I was sitting on my parents' couch, and I was getting my shoes on, getting ready to go work out with my buddies, and there's a knock on the door. JB's standing there, and he's like, yo, practice is in 20 minutes. You're going to be there, right? And I go, yeah, I'll be there. And I think that just showed, you know, I mean, I see so many people, and I've coached at a lot of different schools. I've seen a lot of different coaches where it's just all about, like, you know, the numbers and the wins and this and that, and that has never been the case. I mean, that's a product of what JB does and caring for the athletes, and you know, and I find it very special that I got to, you know, be an athlete and coach with him for a very long time, and now he's been one of my closest friends for a very long time, you know. And I'm sure if he wanted to bring the house down earlier with his jokes, he'd tell everybody why we still have our vote for Hardesty signs in our front yard. But I'm sure if that's an inside joke. But if everybody wants to hear it, you can tell everybody later. Okay, back to it. Next up, Matthew, my brother, my best friend. I know he talked about my coaching and that, and he always was kind of the tag along. I think I was in 5th grade when I was a senior, and he was always in the weight room with us. And he was the first kid I taught to do anything athletic. We taught him how to throw a shot when he was like in 4th grade with an old ball buried. But he was my it's actually it's on my speech. Matt was my guinea pig. Kind of probably still is kind of what we're hashing ideas. We just went to Philadelphia. We're like hashing ideas out the whole way about stuff, about coaching that. But Matt, he put up a lot with me, and it's you know, I think it really kind of hit home when Cheryl was in high school, and she goes, you know, I almost didn't throw in high school. I'm like, why not? I was like, you know, we talked out communism and playing softball, and to come with us, and she said, she goes, I was so scared of you and your brother, the way you guys fought. You guys used to go at it. And I was thinking back, like, snapping brooms and throwing things at each other. Yeah, she saw that, so she might have been doing it back there. But he's, you know, we always kind of went at it, and Matt was there, Matt's always been there, and, you know, he's still my best friend, and so very nice of him to induct me. And then, okay, I know there's a lot of mums here, I'm not going to call here, but last, before I leave, I just want to say, big thanks to really just like the kids in the community here. It's a very special place. I've got so many great friends here. I grew up here, live here now. I've tried a different place. That's one of my closest friends, my boss, my mentor. I've got so many great relationships here, and I think I look back. I coached at a lot of different schools, and I coached here for like 8 years. I kind of got hosed out of job, so I left. And I went to a different school, and it was a school that had, I didn't even have to interview. They brought me in, and they had all the bells and whistles, all-weather track, field turf, anything he asked me. He gave me a check for like $1,000. Hey, buy whatever you want. It's fine. I'm like, man, this is the greatest thing in the world. It's got everything I asked it. The one thing that was different though was the kids. They weren't Garrettsville kids. They were just different. They didn't care. It didn't matter to them. Maybe it's just because I'm from here and biased, but all right. Hope it is something.
That being said, if you give us an all-weather track, we will not stop.
This is true.
I'm just saying. Next in the list is Alan Vine, being welcomed out by his son David.
Well, thank you very much. My father would be very honored, but he was a very modest man, and this would be very difficult for him to do. I used to go to a lot of talks he did, and his main thing was he wanted to sell science to everybody. He was good, and a lot of what he learned in Garrettsville here. He was a hard worker, and he was an athlete, but he wasn't a very good athlete. He played every minute of every game of football for 4 years. And we joked that he was not the best player on the team, so he didn't deserve to be relieved. But he did become a member of the basketball team. And I don't think you all realize how good a basketball team they had back in the 30s. And if my recollection is correct, they got to the semifinals of the state, and there weren't any classes. So it was the whole state. So my father learned how to be a team player. In his entire life, he always felt the team was the most important thing. But he happened to be on so many teams that were so successful that you had to realize that maybe it was because he was on that team. Now he thought he was also the most lucky man in the world because he got to do what he wanted to do. And most people don't. And he got into science, and I don't know how much you all know about during the war, but most people have heard of the Manhattan Project. That was when they developed the atomic bomb. But that didn't actually start until like 1941. My father was graduated from Hiram, and he wanted to go into science, but he didn't have any luck. There was a student there, I don't remember his name, but he was the top student, and at the very last minute, he got a full scholarship to go to Harvard or MIT. And he had this partial scholarship to go to Lehigh, and his friend got on the phone and called Lehigh and said, "I'm really sorry that I can't make this, but I just got this opportunity I have to take." But it just so happens to be I have a classmate here that I think would be more than satisfactory for your job. So he got on the phone, and he was quite a yacker, and he talked his way into Lehigh. So he gets to Lehigh, and it turns out he's sharing an office with a new professor from Rice University in Texas. And he was starting a new field called geophysics. It's the study of the physics of the Earth and how it works. And this professor was asked to look at what the sediment in the Earth was between the plateau in Pennsylvania to the continental shelf. So they went out and they did explosives work, and he needed to get a blast, so they had They had a letter from DuPont that allowed them to get all the dynamite they wanted. And so they would go every 5 or 10 miles, and they'd set up that they had to build a hydrophone that would listen to the vibrations of the earth. And they'd send this, but they weren't really legal. You know, they did this stuff, and they did it not in people's yards, but they did it right on the side of the road. So they could kind of be, you know, not caught or caught or whatnot. Anyway, so they did this. And during the summertime, they'd go up to a place called Woods Hole. It was an oceanographic institute started in 1930 by the Rockefeller Foundation. They built a ship called the Atlantis, and they would go off and do the same explosives in the ocean. Well, it turned out it's like anything, when you do something at the first time, you know, the theory says one thing, and then you find out the theory isn't necessarily true. They thought they had to put the explosives on the bottom of the ocean. So they made all this apparatus to go down there, and so then you wanted to recover it, so you had to float up the surface. So they used salt licks. The salt lick would dissolve in so much time, and it would release what they had on floats to lift it up. Well, the problem was the only salt lick they knew was for cattle, and it's a pretty big block. Because I remember it's like, you know, 6 or 8 inches long and this deep or something like that. So they had to cut it with a hacksaw, and it took them a long time. And Dad said, "Well, we didn't realize they made them for squirrels." So he was always a firm believer in asking questions. And I worked in the nuclear industry, and it's true, the only truly stupid question is the one that's not asked, because that's the one that people don't want to. They're embarrassed. Now, my father was very special. Most people will not ask questions when they don't know the answers, you know. The lawyers typically will refuse to ask a question that they don't already know the answer. Well, in science, that's not true. You have to ask questions to figure out all those things. Now, I'm sorry, I'm not a professional speaker, so I'm probably going to go all over the place. But, so they did this. And then in 1940, he finished his graduate degree, and they were going to go out to the Pacific. They didn't know much about the Pacific, and so they were going to go on a 2-year expedition, and they were going to use a Coast Guard cutter that was surplus, and they decided at that time the war had broken out and they would be captured as spies. So they canceled it. So they went up to Woods Hole, and World War I, we almost lost the war because of German submarines. And a lot of the brightest people in the world, in America, realized that we really needed it. You know, the Germans were going to be that much farther along in submarines. So his professor went up, and they got a contract from this group called the National Defense Research Committee to study underwater sound. And there had been an instrument design called the bathythermograph. The only problem was it didn't work. So my father had been an instrument maker for this professor, and they decided to go ahead and try to redesign this. Now, what happens in the ocean is there's what they call a thermocline, and the sun shines down on the water, and it heats up the water, and there's a difference in temperature between the surface and then below it. And in some parts of the ocean, this is very thin. In some places, it's maybe 100, 200 feet down. Well, if you can get below this thermocline, have you ever shined a light through a prism? You know, the light separates into all the different colors. Well, that's exactly what sound is. Just like light, it's a wave, and it was a way for the submarines to hide from the surface. And the Navy was reluctant necessarily to take any information. You know, it's the old story, if it's not designed here, we don't want to hear about it. Well, these guys designed it, and they worked it. And so they first worked with the Surface People Navy, and they actually had a class where they brought in 100 people to train, and my father had a group of people to teach them. And then they got the idea, well, gee, if we help surface people, shouldn't we be telling the submarine people so they can hide? So my father totally redesigned the instrument and put it on all the submarines, and they had a group and they wrote all the submarines during the war. And we only lost a third of our submarines. Now the Germans lost over 2/3 of them. Now I don't know if you know anything about the history of submarines, but when the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor, they made a major flaw. They didn't attack the fuel tanks, and they didn't attack the submarines. The submarines represented less than 3% of the Navy, both as the cost of shipping and the personnel, but yet they sank well over 50% of the tonnage and about 25% of the military ships. Well, when my father talked, they listened to him. He saved a lot of lives. And he was very interesting guy. He could think on his feet and whatnot. He was talking when he was out in Pearl Harbor, and he was talking to an English submariner, and they wouldn't talk to him. They didn't trust scientists or anything like that. So my father said, well, maybe I can tell him something in just a matter of minutes that he'll know that I know more about his submarine than he did. So my father started asking, well, what's your submarine do this and that? Now, I'm sorry I can't tell you what those things were. But in about 3 minutes, my father knew more about that submarine than he did. And if he wanted to find out about it, he was going to have to talk to my father about what he wanted to know about the English submarine system. And he was very good at that. He made a trip to Asia in the 70s, and the submarine people want to talk to him, and sometimes your security clearance doesn't go through. And so he's out there and talking, and I said, oh, that's not a problem. He says, let's get together, and I'm just going to give you like a lecture in school, and I'm going to say, this is what I think you want to know, or I know what you want to know, and I'm going to give you this information, and you can ask me questions hypothetically, not telling me where you are, what is. But I served on submarines, and one of the reasons I found out my father, I was 19 years old, I got on a submarine, and my captain met me in the galley. I was scrubbing pots and pans, and he said, you're from Woods Hole, your name's Vine. Are you related to some guy named Alan Vine? I said, yes, sir, that's my father. So he ordered me to his stateroom when we were back out at sea, and for 8 hours he grilled me. Now, it wasn't all at one time, but he wanted to know everything about my father, and what he did, where he came from, what was his lifestyle, what kind of books he read, and whatnot. And that was the first time I really got to understand that my father was somebody. You know, fathers are wonderful, but he was gone all the time in my youth. And we actually, when he was home, we wouldn't let him go to anything because we said, well, if you can't come every other time. Now he'd say, well, you know, Dad, he said, son, I could have been a salesman, you know, I could have been gone all the time. And I wanted to say, but Dad, salesmen come home on the weekends. But he'd be gone for 3-6 months. So anyway, he became very involved with submarines, and he actually supported this instrument for 25 years. He built it in 40, and he kept working on it into the 60s. And anyway, shortly after the war, they had other groups that worked on supporting submarines, and the submarine people didn't realize what the potential was. And so the key people for all the different programs that working for this National Research Committee got together, and they supported all the R&D for submarines after the war. This was before the Office of Naval Research started. They asked my father to be head of it, and he said, no, I don't want to give up my science. So what he did was he volunteered to be a support for them. And they did something very interesting. They would fund projects, and then they would follow up so closely that when there were problems, if it wasn't working out right, you know, bureaucracies are such they want to hide all the information from what's going on, so they can keep funding something even though it doesn't work. Well, they eliminated all that kind of stuff. If a project was working well, they gave them more money, they gave them more feelings to do. And my father didn't believe in necessarily supporting,
the oceanographer where he worked, he went to the people who were doing the best in the field and whatnot. And anyway, they actually, they bring 100 or 200 people in from the field, and they teach them what was truly possible. Now, one of the things they said was, if you were operating a submarine very quickly, you'd have to be at battle stations all the time. So how could you be on battle station? Because every component had to have an individual on there that it was necessary to operate that piece of equipment. They'd be necessary. Well, they didn't realize there were methods of taking electricity and sending a signal to something called a pilot valve that moves hydraulics or pneumatics to the position of what you want, so one person can do the job of 20 or 30 people. And that's what they were able, and that is called human engineering, and it was very interesting that they did that. So anyhow, they said, well, we want to prove this to you. So they said, well, the only way we recommend you do that is you build an experimental submarine. So they built a submarine called the USS Albacore, and it's now land-based, locked in up at Portsmouth, New Hampshire. And my cousin Michael and I went to visit it, and it was scheduled to be rebuilt 4 times to change 4 different formats of how the hull was, what equipment was on it, and it was extremely successful. It was done right about the time that the Nautilus came along. And the Nautilus was the first nuclear-powered submarine, and they both came out in 55 or 56. And the big question was, what would happen if the Russians got this information? What would they do with it and whatnot? And so they had a meeting in the summer of 1956 in my hometown, Woods Hole, where they brought in 60 to 70 of America's brightest minds, and they would break up into groups, and then they'd bring in people from all the top fields that they wanted to. And I interviewed one of the people that was there, and they wouldn't tell them why they were there, but they would grill them. Now, my father I've got a tape of him after the war, and he said when he was teaching these people on the submarine how to use this instrument, that they would literally drain you dry. In other words, they took every information they could out of you, and that's where my father was. He was like a child. If he wanted to learn something, he'd come at you from all sides, and it was pretty interesting. Okay, one of the things they discovered during the war was not only the thermocline, but below the thermocline, there's the bottom of the ocean. The bottom of the ocean is actually warmer. It seeps through the crust of the earth, and then it cools off. So you have this boundary layer from the bottom and the boundary layer at the top. And the sound will travel thousands of miles. Anyway, during the war, they wanted to, the scientists wanted to put in what they called listening stations, and you can triangulate if a pilot would drop a bomb or a hand grenade, they could triangulate where this was, and the submarines could go out and pick them up. Well, the military says, what do you mean, a hand grenade on an airplane? Now the scientist says, now wait a minute. You have bombs on planes, you have guns on, bullets on machines, and you have fuel. What the hell is a hand grenade? Well, they wouldn't do it. But during the Cold War, they started realizing they needed to find out what this really worked. So what they did was they said, well, let's put hydrophone listening stations all around the world, and but we needed a way to inspect these installations. And that's why the Alvin was built. At the time, the scientists believed that there was nothing to be learned in the deep ocean. And in the long run, it turns out we had to go to the bottom of the ocean to discover how life began in the universe, not just on Earth. And what they found was there are cracks in the ocean where chemicals come out. And it's called a different process. Instead of photosynthesis, it's called chemosynthesis. And it turns out all the water in the ocean, I don't remember what the cycle period is, but something like every 20 or 30 years, all the water in the oceans effectively go through down into the mantle and come back up. And so that's the only time I ever heard my father really brag, was he said that they were putting that first show on chemothesis, and he said, son, you really need to watch this program. It's something like this happens once, if you're lucky, once every 100 years. And he, as I said, he was very modest. He never bragged about anything. You all were saying, well, what have you done? My father never said anything like that. He thought everybody should do their best job. And as I said, he was a team player, and that's what he thought. I think that's all I have to say, unless anybody wants to ask, and you may not want to. But somebody was saying earlier about what did Dad think about the Titanic and whatnot. Well, my father talked the Navy into building the submarine. The money came to Woods Hole, and he hired everybody that worked on the program, and he helped it get built. But as soon as it was built, he had to walk away from it. He had other things to do. Now it's kind of interesting. 3 days before I was married, they lost the Alvin. They were getting ready to try to do a test dive, and it was in rough water, and the water started coming in, and they decided that it wasn't worth trying to risk anybody's life, so they left the submarine, and the hatch was open, and it went down to the bottom of the ocean. So I said, here's another thing my father wouldn't make it to. But he said, no. Years later, he said, no, I knew that was going to be down there for a while. I was telling somebody earlier, somebody left a sandwich. The sandwich was left down there. And they pulled it up, and there were several sandwiches down there. And it looked so real, like it was a still good sandwich, that one of the guys actually took a bite out of it. And you know what? It hadn't decomposed at all. The only thing, it was like you take a sandwich and put it in water. It was mushy. So it actually, they decided, well, what the heck's going on here? So they went out and did some research on what happens with decomposition, under pressure and whatnot. And so that was kind of interesting. There was a ship that they were supposed to use for looking for these things. It was called the Illuminaut. It was made by Reynolds Metals. It was all aluminum, and the director didn't think that. Well, the director of the oceanographic wanted complete control of the submarine. And Reynolds was a kind of eccentric multi-millionaire, and he said, hell no. So then, the last minute, they decided to build the Alvin. They went after the Alvin. They went to, of all places, well, they put out the bid, but they went to General Mills, which is, a lot of people says it was Kellogg's because they said it was Wheaties, right? The Breakfast of Champions. But it was really Cheerios that did it. And they happened to have a guy there who was doing design work. Gosh, I can't pronounce his name anymore. I used to know it. But he says, oh yeah, I've got a sketch for something called C-Pup. And that's what they did. So anyway, the guys were around Christmas time, they made, that were building the Alvin, came up with a Christmas card that said Alvin on it. Some people said it was after Alvin the Chipmunk. There was also a cartoon in the 20s or 30s with the name Alvin in it, and they said that was that. But I always say, well, why the heck did my mother christen it if it was the Alvin the Chipmunk? But people were asking about the Titanic, and it's an interesting question, interesting thing. Ballard was the one that actually did it, and he was given money from the Navy to go find the Scorpion. And he said, I really would like to look at the Titanic. And they said, well, we'll give you 5 extra days. If you find the Scorpion, you can take whatever time's left plus 5 days to go find it. And from the experience that he gathered from looking at the Scorpion, he was able to find the Titanic. And how did he do that? He looked for the debris field. As the ship comes down, it kind of spreads out all around. So he got lucky. He found the debris field and was able to chase it. But my understanding is now he's very upset that he did, because people would come down and taking things off it. He really wanted it to be. Now my mother actually, my father would write these proposals for things, and my mother was a lot of times his biggest critic. And they'd say, Al, people think you're crazy enough already. You don't need to be putting this stuff up. So he had to scratch all that out. But I think that's about it. Unless somebody has something. Again, thank you very much for this honor for him. He was, but there, I guess there's two other things. When I went into the military, my father gave me a couple suggestions, and he said, whatever you do, do the best you can. Make me proud. You will see things in life that you will not understand. Try to figure it out. One of the things I liked was he talked about the green flash. I don't know if you ever heard of the green flash. But when the sun sets and rises, there's a clear enough horizon, the edge, the corona, or above the clouds will flash green momentarily. Now, if you blink, you won't see it. And I went to sea for a while, and I'd be standing next to a guy, and he said, boy, that was the biggest green flash I've seen in 10 years. And you'd say, baloney. So the next night, I started holding my eyelids open. And sure enough, I saw it. Well, I told my submarine captain about it. He told me I was crazy. So I got off the submarine, and we got back in port, and I went to the library, and I Xeroxed all that stuff. And I kind of forgot it. I went to a reunion 30 years later, and the guy says, as far as I know, you're the only guy that ever put one over on the old man. So that's what we call the captain. Yes. Well, thank you again very much. And
follow that. Scientific information, that's outstanding. So that draws our evening to a conclusion. One last, I don't have any oceanic.
Can't even say it.
I can't either. We'll do farmers use to make those crop circles. Protractors. See, you didn't mind after all. With that, it draws our evening to a close. I want to thank everybody for coming out, and congratulations to our new inductees, and very deserving. Get the group, the inductees together for a group shot, and we have plaques and photos and whatnot for you. Thank you again for coming out, and please drive safely.